So first off, let me click back on my screen so it actually presents. A little bit about my background. So I am an evangelist at Epic Games. I've been in the industry. I started as a modder in the late 90s and have worked at a bunch of different development studios in my career, including Ubisoft, Bungie, Warner Brothers Games. I did work for Overbrook Entertainment, which is Will Smith's production company. And I also ran my own studio called Cerealan LLC for 5 years. So I've done AAA development. I have done indie game development, shipped multiple games in Unreal Engine as an indie, both with a publisher and self-published. And about 3.5 years ago, I joined Epic Games as an evangelist. Some of the games that I've worked on, again, at Ubisoft, I focused on the Clancy franchise. So I was creative director on the Ghost Recon franchise, started on Rainbow Six, worked Ghost Recon primarily on the Xbox, Island Thunder through Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2. Also did some work on Future Soldier and Ghost Recon Predator. Then I moved to Bungie, where I was the design lead on Halo Reach. After that, I went to Warner Brothers, where I worked actually on a bunch of different titles, doing a lot of early work and concepting on a variety of different franchises, including Mad Max and the Middle Earth franchise. After Warner Brothers is when I started my own studio. I did the whole Kickstarter route, started a Kickstarter, raised funds, shipped one game called Takedown Red Saber on PC and Xbox Live Arcade, partnered with 505 Games. And then moved on, worked on Epsilon, which was an early access title in Unreal 4, and did a experimental virtual reality title called Hotel Blind in Unreal 4 as well. During that time, also did consulting on a variety of different AAA games, most of which I can't talk about, but one of them was the After Earth mobile game for the wildly successful After Earth science fiction franchise. That was a little sarcasm. So before I get into the presentation, let me talk just a little bit about what an evangelist does at Epic. So we have evangelists all around the world. We are region-based. So there's a few of us in North America, South America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. We also have business groups in various countries in Asia. And the evangelists have a lot of different roles, but one of them is supporting independent game developers. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you some links and some resources specifically for indie devs that are using Unreal Engine or interested in the Epic ecosystem, whether it be the Epic Games Store, Epic Online Services, the Epic Mega Grants, all the various different things that Epic provides for developers. I'm going to touch at that at the end of this presentation. So I'm going to jump right into the lessons. Again, I had to boil down 5 things that I wanted to talk about in relation to indies to shipping. All of these are really about focusing on things that you can take away that if you're shipping your first game, you might not have thought about or might not be thinking about. And they're things that if you're working on a game right now, you should be thinking about. And I highly recommend that you start working on right now. So the first tip, and some of these are going to be bigger than just, they're not just going to be one-liners. I'm going to kind of talk through each one of them. The first tip is to prepare for your platforms. So when I talk about platforms, basically, what am I talking about first off? Well, the platform that you're going to be shipping on, whether that be consoles, PC, mobile, virtual reality, when we're talking about consoles, which console are you going to be on? PC, which storefront are you going to be on? Basically, what is the platform for your game, and getting prepared for that early. A lot of game developers, a lot of indie game developers, just start developing their game without a lot of thought of where it's going to ship or a lot of planning and continual thinking about the various different platforms that they're going to need to be on. They kind of tend to push that out, and they're just working on the core mechanics of their game, keep working along. And then as the shipping window comes up, it's like, okay, now I need to figure out where I'm going to ship or start preparing for where I want to ship. So a few things to think about that. And these are all items that I run into a lot when I'm talking with indie game developers. I run into these challenges a lot. I run into indie game developers having challenges with these, and that's where this information comes from. So the first thing is actually choosing a primary platform. And there's a few different aspects for that. For the main thing from development, you've got two aspects that you really need to think about from development when choosing a primary platform. The one is your primary user interface. That's pretty straightforward. If you're going to be working on a virtual reality game, there is a lot of technical and gameplay and user interface considerations that you need to think about going into that. And you really need to build from that from the ground up. Same for obviously mobile development, or if you're working on a game for, say, the Roku platform or a streaming type platform. There's a lot of technical and interface considerations that go into that. But even, for example, if you're starting on just working on a PC game, you need to start considering whether you're going to have controller support. You're going to start considering different technical aspects. There's challenges with every different type of development. Obviously, consoles are more of a closed system. You have more of an idea of the type of hardware that you're going to be shipping on. And are much more limited on controller interfaces, so you can be more focused on your user experience, whereas PC offers much more variety, things like that. But you need to have a good idea of what those platforms are going to be early on. Obviously, hopefully it's obvious that if you start developing a game with a, say, game controller interface, for PC or Xbox, and then down the line decide, well, I'm also going to adapt this gameplay interface to a mobile phone, which is a touch interface, you're going to have a lot of changes that you're going to need to do. But even changes between, say, PC and Xbox, even if their physical architecture is quite similar, you're going to have a lot of things like how the interface works, player chat, achievements, all the various different interfaces, all the way down from the difference between a main menu using a mouse interface versus a controller interface, and all the things that go along with that. So ideally, you're going to choose one primary platform that you're going to focus on as you're developing your gameplay and your user experience. And I recommend, picking one as that primary SKU is what we would say, in AAA parlance. And that's your primary development SKU. That's what you're planning on shipping first. That's what you're pushing forward. Now, you can add further SKUs down the line, either with your own team or possibly, bringing in additional support, things like that. But having one SKU to focus on, both from a technical standpoint and a gameplay and user interface standpoint, I think is important. Now, with those platforms, once you've kind of chosen that SKU, or if you think that there's going to be additional SKUs that you want to bring into the mix, you need to figure that out and get approved early. For the main consoles, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, every single one of those requires approval by the platform holder for you to start to be able to ship on that platform, but also to get access to the SDK for that platform. And generally, the way that system works, at least in the Unreal space, is that you need to first get approved by the platform holder. So, for example, if you want to ship on Xbox, the primary goal, the primary place that game developers should go is ID at Xbox. You can apply to be join the ID at Xbox program. You'll fill out an application form online. Once you get approved by the platform holder, whether it be Microsoft, Nintendo, PlayStation, that information will be sent over to Epic. And if you use your same login information, it's relatively automated and straightforward. And you'll be then, once you get through the platform approval, you'll be provided with the SDK for Unreal Engine, login credentials for that. You'll be able to set up your developer environment and start actually cooking out builds on those platforms. But even if it is not a restricted console, like Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch, if you are planning to use any services that are going to be embedded with the platform, say if you're planning to use Steam for all of your multiplayer services, you're going to want to get approved on that platform early as well, so you can start understanding what the developer environment looks like, how to upload your builds, how to distribute things, what additional services you may need to use, and what kind of legal things that you're going to need to do. Epic Online Services, for example, if you're going to be using that for your online subsystems on PC, you're going to want to do that early. Some of these processes take time, and they can take a variety a different amount of time based on when you're applying, how many other people are applying, where the consoles are in their life cycles. Obviously, a few months before a new console cycle starts and consoles are about to ship, lots of people are flooding into that platform and wanting to put their games on that platform, and those account managers can get overwhelmed. They can get backlogged. And there can be delays in those responses. It can take, a few months to get all of the NDAs signed, depending on when you're coming into the system. So I recommend that as soon as you know that you want to be on a closed platform, that you go ahead and make those applications now. You can get all of your legal paperwork done, get approved by the platform holders as a developer without buying hardware, without jumping ahead. You can just go ahead and get all the legal stuff done now, and then down the line, if you 6 months, 8 months, a year, whenever you're ready to start, say you are shipping on PC and you want to make a Xbox port or a Switch port, you can then go ahead and set up your developer environment, get your dev kits and your hardware, and start moving forward on that. But I recommend that you move forward as soon as possible to get approved on those platforms. Get that paperwork out of the way, get that legalese out of the way, get all your boxes checked, and start rocking and rolling in that. So the next part of that is the platform cooking. I'm going to talk a little bit about this, the Q&A, but once you get those legal approvals, then the next thing you're going to want to do is get that developer environment set up and start cooking on your ideal platform right now. So whether using, again, Unreal Engine or other technology, you need to go through that process early on. Don't wait until you're a month out from delivering your first playable beta to your community to wait to see, like, well, can I actually cook this for the Switch, or can I actually even cook this for the PC? You need to be working in a shipping environment as early as possible. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of some of the lessons and the test issues in the next subject. But you want to go ahead and just go through all the steps. You will be surprised at all the little things that you run into that will slow you and your team down, whether it be if you need some kind of external studio license, even if it's free software that you need to get to, say, cook out a build for a console or something like that. There's different steps for different ones, but you need to be cooking and testing in that shippable environment, or that environment that you plan to ship in as early as possible. Don't sit around and wait and just test everything running in editor all the time and just assume that everything's going to go completely smooth. There are just a lot of little things that you may run into when you start cooking out your platform. So get that developer environment set up. Go through the pain of getting that done and start testing that. So the next tip related to what I was just talking about, and I'm going to get right into a duplicate here, is don't just test the game, QA. And what I mean by that is, hopefully as game developers, we all know that testing is critical, iteration is critical, getting it in front of people is critical. But you need to think about your testing from a quality assurance standpoint. It's not just about making sure your game is fun and making sure that the cool parts of your game look cool and all those things, but you need to start just battering through all the various different QA issues that you're going to run into, and you need to approach it from a organized quality assurance standpoint. There's a lot of software that can help organize this on a small team, both internally and externally, whether it be things like Jira, whether it be organizational tools like Trello to organize agile systems, things like that. But you need to get into the mode of, you're not just testing to make sure your game runs, and you're not just testing to make sure your game is fun, that you are doing QA passes and get into that mindset. Start reading up on, QA functionality and things like that. So, well, I should have gone to this slide. If you folks get this reference about cleaning up the level 3 in the new game you're testing, so you can start to design your new one, you'll get this that joke reference. If not, it just makes me look old. But yeah, get into that test realm. So back to what I was already just saying, which is cook and test on platform. The anecdote that really made me want to include this is, there was a developer. They actually weren't in Unreal. It was just a developer on Twitter that I ran across, and they were having an issue where they had implemented a new feature, and nobody was experiencing the feature. It was some kind of unlockable or achievement system, and nobody was utilizing it. So they put it out. They weren't getting any good returns. The feedback on it, people just didn't seem excited about it. They weren't responding to it. Well, it turns out what had happened was, they were testing, again, they weren't in Unreal, but they were testing in Editor. So they had implemented the feature. They were testing running in Editor, and everything was working fine. They were cooking a build, deploying it to Steam, putting it up, and kind of waiting for feedback to test the discoverability. Well, what had happened is the UI elements that they had built for it weren't getting rendered when it was run in a cooked build. It was only running in Editor. So the developer wasn't actually, none of this was being displayed to the actual players that were playing in the ship build. And the developer, they eventually tracked it down and fixed it and figured it out. But they weren't testing the cook build locally before they deployed it to Steam. They were just testing in Editor, cooking the build, making sure the build worked, and uploading it, and then waiting for people to find out. And they didn't find out themselves until they went into the actual Steam build, played it, and then realized that none of the UI from this feature was getting displayed. So that's why nobody was enjoying the feature, because nobody could see it. So that problem would have been solved by actual QA process, i.e., we are deploying this feature, we're going to cook it to a build, we're going to deploy it to these machines, we are going to log in on the cooked build, run it on a variety of different hardware, a variety of just different display settings, kind of run through the steps. There are automated testing solutions for, just testing, running your builds and testing them. Highly recommend you looking into those. But actually having a process and not just kind of winging it, or not just kind of going by your gut, is the way to not run into problems like that. So again, cooking and testing on the platform, whether it be, again, even if you're cooking and testing on PC, before you make that Steam build live, upload it to Steam, re-download it onto those machines, make sure that build uploaded correctly, test it, do all those things. These kind of problems game developers run into these all the time. Even back when I worked at AAA on Xbox, we actually, one of the studios I worked at, were deploying a DLC package for a big AAA DLC game. And we deployed we tested the DLC package, we deployed it, we sent it to the platform for green light. It made it almost all the way through certification when we got a notification back that some of the localization tags weren't displaying correctly. So instead of just displaying the correct localization for various different things, it was displaying basically missing localization tag error messages. And it turns out what happened is the producer that was in charge of actually uploading the DLC package to the platform uploaded a copy of different older DLC package, uploaded the wrong package. And it made it a good way through testing before that was actually caught. Because nobody had actually, when they moved the files over and went to upload them, no one went in and did that final QA double check on that actual file set to make sure that it was the right one, loaded it up, checked it out, made sure that it was all working. So even in a AAA environment, if you don't have rigorous test standards, you can run into issues like that. So having a staged test group. So this is particular to indie devs. You want to utilize, the resources that you have available to you. So whether that's your team, your friends and family test group, the fans that are involved in your community, have a staged group of folks that is that kind of last check before it goes out to your wider audience. So whether that be a closed group on your forums of 100 folks that have bought the game that have volunteered to just test that patch just to make sure that they go in. And maybe the day before you put it up, you upload it to the platform, deploy it. They have a beta code, they log in, make sure that it works on their system, just that kind of final check, that stage test group, where you can get it out to them and have them check. Don't depend on, the 3 folks in your team or 5 folks on your team. Have someone external to your group that's doing that. Obviously, this can, be applied to a large group, a small group, depending on the scope of your game and your community, but have someone external besides yourself and the actual developers working on the game get some eyes on the actual product just as a final over-the-shoulder check before it goes out. This is something that can be expanded. If the game hasn't come out yet, obviously you can do beta signups or alpha signups where people can volunteer to test the game in exchange for access to, say, behind the scenes things or free copies of the game down the road, things like that. But you want to have an actual group of folks that you're reaching out to actually interact with this content. And for those test groups, for those online groups, you want to have some type of format. Again, thinking about things from a QA standpoint, not just they're testing the game, but they're actually helping to be part of the quality assurance process. But having an actual form that folks can fill out with the type of information that you're going to need to help to track down what those issues may be. Formatting for, hey, here's how you're going to describe this problem or this bug that you ran into. Here's the situation, please. Here's the steps to how you ran into it and how to replicate how you ran into it, because you want to gather as much useful information as that you can for yourself and your team to be able to solve and fix these issues. And by providing forms that players and testers can easily fill out and fill that information in, can be extremely useful. Even just having fields that how do I replicate this field, where they have to type something into that field, into that form, even if it's just start game, notice clouds are broken, exit game. That can be really useful. Having required fields for what version of the game you're running, that makes sure that the person hopefully goes and actually looks at the version of the game they're running, so they're trying to test something and they didn't actually update to the latest build, and they're just testing it and saying, reverting a bug is broken because, they don't see the fix because they didn't actually go get the build. Requiring, what platform are you playing it on? Are you playing it on a, 32-bit PC or 64-bit PC? What resolution are you running at? What kind of graphics card do you have? Like, all that kind of information can be put into forms depending on the platform that you're trying to test. Hey, go test this feature with a controller. What controller are you using? Are you using an Xbox controller? Are you using a third-party controller? All those different bits of information can be incredibly useful. But the main thing that it does for people is it stops them from just doing the easy response of, yeah, it's broken, or yeah, it's all good. Checked it. It's all good. try to give them the best opportunity to give you the most information that they can, that's going to be the most useful to them. And that's going to help you provide a better product back to them. Okay, and let's see. All right, so tip number 3, announce early and release later. So this is, again, in relation to shipping. And I don't have a lot of specific tips like for this. I want to just kind of talk about it in general, and mainly in relation to challenges that I see indie devs running into. And I struggled with this one a bit about, kind of breaking it down into different tips. And a lot of people ask me about this. Hey, I've got my indie game that I've been working on. I haven't announced it yet. I don't know when to announce it or how to announce it, or should I announce it? And then when it comes to shipping, do I do, open betas? Do I do an early access release? I want to do an early access release because I need to generate revenue, or I want to do an early access release to give people, the earliest version of the game possible. And I want to do scaling prices, all these various different things. But the general approach that I think about is announcing early and then releasing when you're ready, releasing later. And that's where just basically this kind of anecdote came from, or this term came from. When it comes to announcing, a lot of indie game developers specifically don't want to show things until they're perfect, right? And I totally understand that. You don't want to show content from your game until you have a lot to show, until you're gonna make a splash, you're gonna have everything looking the best, and you don't want to show anything until that point. There's kind of 2 reasons for that I hear a lot. One is and this one is kind of the craziest, is I don't want to give away the idea of my game. Now, some of that can be I don't know what the publishing plan for my game is. I don't know if I have my new IP. I've developed my new intellectual property, this new world that I'm building, this new storyline, this new setting, and I want to sell it to publishers. So that is my goal, and I don't want to announce it and let anybody know about it until I have a time to present it to a publisher. Because if I've already announced it, they're not going to want to pick it up, and there is some validity to that. That is a concern if you're pitching to publishers. However, you can still announce the title. You can still choose to hold a lot back and announce, "Hey, I'm an indie game developer, and I'm working on a game, and my studio is called Tape Measure Studios." And, we're going to be working on a game that you're going to really love. And if you've liked our games in the past, or if you don't know anything about our games, please sign up for our mailing list, that kind of stuff. You can do those kinds of announcements and set up that kind of infrastructure, get your social media going, separate your social media from your personal social media into your game's social media, your studio social media. Start getting that infrastructure. Start talking to other indie game developers. Start talking to the fans of the genre that you're working in. It is not going to hurt a publisher discussion or relationship that you have a press kit up and set up for your studio with a studio logo that looks very professional, contact information saying, "Hey, we're an indie game studio with 4 folks in Vancouver, Canada, and we're working on real-time strategy game because real-time strategy is, our passion, and this is what we love. And if you're a fan of real-time strategy games, you should get in contact with us and keep an eye out for what we're doing in the future." You can do all that setup and still have your pitch for what your real-time strategy game is, and save that for your publisher pitch. Now, if you're not planning on going with the publisher and you're planning on doing self-publishing and release and things like that, you still want to announce that, have that kind of infrastructure set up early. You can have key concept art, you can have things that will help represent your game without putting up gameplay and things like that. You can be ready for those things ahead of time. You generally don't want to be announcing and setting up your Twitter account and your studio Instagram account and doing all that a week before you launch or a day before you announce. You want to start gathering that stuff early. So making those announcements earlier rather than later. And then, fighting against that, or at least having a strong pushback against that urge to not show anything until it's perfect. There's also obviously the, kind of social media approach of just sharing, your development of, hey, here's the behind the scenes of how I'm developing this feature and I'm building it in Unreal. And, here's some animation tests that I'm doing with my characters. That's up to you whether you want to do that level of involvement. I find that is very valuable. It can be extremely useful. But some people aren't comfortable doing that. Some people want to keep things close to the vest, and that's totally fine as well. But you still want to have that announce in early rather than later. Now, when it comes to releasing, that's when you want to do things later. And when I talk about releasing, it can be, hey, when you want to put out that big trailer, when you want to put up that open beta, when you want to release that early access version of the game, you only get one launch, and that's what people say. I really shouldn't say it that strongly because you only get one launch, but everything's digital these days. So there's part of my presentation later is going to be talking about a follow-up from launch, but you do have a limited opportunity to make a splash. So if you're making different trailers every week, people will stop paying attention to those trailers. So if you start out with a badly edited trailer showing broken assets and not a visually good looking presentation, and then you just slowly iterate on that trailer and release it, every week over the course of a year, very few people are going to be, going to come back in and be like, oh my gosh, did you see that new trailer of that indie game? Oh yeah, I did. I saw it 3 months ago. Why would I look at this version? Oh, it looks way better. Generally, you're going to get a limited eyes on, something like a first trailer. So you do want to make sure that's as polished as possible, and without running into the trap of sitting on it forever, which I run into a lot of indies of, hey, I've been, polishing this for 2 years and I never announced it, and I want to launch it next week. So you have to find that balance. When it comes to early access, that's where I find a lot of indie teams jump the gun and release things too early. And the challenge with that is that when you release a product up for sale, whether it's early access or just a full-on for sale product, people will write reviews about it. People will judge it because you're charging for a product. So waiting until you're in a good time for that, especially if it's a type of game, a multiplayer game that needs people involved for it, to be successful. I see so many games that launch on early access in a multiplayer environment, and the first reviews written of the game are, nobody's playing this. It's dead. There's nobody in the servers. The forums are dead. This game's dead. That's the first 3 reviews. Or the first 5 forum posts, or nobody's here. It's empty. Where is everybody? That could have been alleviated with things like closed betas of saying like, hey, if you're interested in this game, sign up for this closed beta. And, the first 500 people that sign up, or 100 people, or 20 people, or whatever you feel comfortable managing, sign up and get in and start playing, so that when you go to early access, assuming those people like the game and it goes forward and they're playing it, there's actually going to be people online, thinking about what that launch looks like, because nothing looks worse for your indie game than when someone runs across it, they go to the store page, and the forum, the game's been out for 4 months. The forums are completely dead. There's no updates. Nobody's posting about it. They go to Steam charts and 2 people, one of them, which is you, is playing the game. And they go, well, that doesn't look great. Or there's no reviews. It's been out for 6 months. There's no activity. And they're like, well, that doesn't look great. So you need to have all these things spun up, ready to go. And I'll talk a little bit about, post-launch. You need to have all these things spun up and ready to go, so that you can have players in the game interacting with it. You are ready to support the game and interact with it. Don't rush it out, because you can't pull that back. You can't pull that early access tag back. And I have made this mistake myself. So I'm talking from personal experience of launching these things too early. Same thing with game reviews, or first looks and things like that. You only get one first look, from a streamer. If a streamer opens it up and it's completely dead, or it's broken and it's not ready to go, they're much less likely to come back and take a look at it again in the future. So think about when you're going to release, and obviously having deadlines and goals is very important from a development standpoint. It's very important from a business development standpoint of, the resources and money and time that you're putting into this title. You need to have launch dates and plans and everything scheduled out. But you need to be constantly assessing, are those goals and dates feasible and realistic? And is this going to happen? And is the market good for this? You are generally releasing your product into a digital environment that you control. You are controlling when that comes out. And even if you previously committed to, we are going to ship this game in October 1st because it's going to be awesome, and that is when everybody is going to play my fantasy card trading game, and it's going to be great. And then you find out that there is an Oblivion card trading game, or a Dungeons and Dragons card trading game that is releasing on September 29th. Well, maybe it's not best to release your indie card trading game 2 days after Dungeons and Dragons launches one. Maybe you should move that up or push it out. You be flexible in those launches. Look at the market. Are you launching up against, some kind of big game event that is just going to suck all the air out of the room? And there's no way that your title is going to stand out because, there's this big event happening. Probably the week before E3, when all the consoles are doing all their press conferences, that probably isn't the best time to, launch your indie game on itch.io, because, eyes just aren't going to be in that space for that week. So keep an eye out on those different variables. Are those dates going to work for me? Is there something else coming up? Is there, some reason that I shouldn't launch in that? And be open with your community. If you need to push it out for, variety of reasons, push it out. People will always say that they want it now. They want it right now. They want it done right now. They want it perfect right now. And that's what they're always going to say. If they're not saying that, they're not excited about your game. They're not really interested in it. They're like, yeah, whatever. Sure, I don't care. Then they don't care. If they're rational and smart about it, they'll say, yes, I really want this right now, but you should definitely keep working on it until it's the experience that you want it to be for me, so I can properly evaluate it, properly just enjoy the vision that you have. But most likely what they're going to say, because they're humans, is, yes, this is awesome. Give it to me right now. You must ship this. Give it to me tomorrow. And that's a good thing. But it is okay, and it will be better for you in the long run if there is going to be some major issue that you need to push out for a couple weeks or a month or into the next quarter. It's not. It's much better to ship with a well-rounded, solid product a little bit later and have that good initial launch and that good initial feedback and those good initial reviews, rather than the other way around. Again, you can use alphas and betas and closed test groups and all of these things to bring in that community and have players in your game before you're like, yes, okay, now it is ready to go to the masses. So I'm running a little over time here, so I'm going to try to kind of speed through these last points. Along with everything that I just talked about is being ready for marketing opportunities. I like to say this is more the kind of positive to what I just talked about, as far as like, oh, be ready to delay your game and deal with changes, and the market changes, and PC marketplaces that didn't exist when I started on this game a year and a half ago exist, and where should I go and what should I do? But being ready for opportunities is important as well. And there's kind of the good example and the bad example that I'll use for this. The good example is using your technology and being agile as an indie. The RTX on with NVIDIA platform, the rollout of that was a huge opportunity for indie game developers. And I saw a lot of indie game developers taking advantage of that. Because RTX was supported by Unreal Engine, we were partnered with NVIDIA. We did a lot of the earlier work on that. That was rolled out to Unreal Engine developers. And what I saw was a lot of indie game developers, they were enabled to utilize RTX through Unreal Engine. They realized that RTX was a huge benefit to their game from a visual standpoint. They implemented it very quickly, at least from a presentation standpoint, and they were able to then reach out to NVIDIA and say, hey, you just announced this 2 weeks ago. Now it's in Unreal Engine, it wasn't 2 weeks, but you just announced this. Now it's in Unreal Engine. I have it implemented in my indie game, and I have a video ready to go. And NVIDIA was like, awesome, let's showcase on this on our platforms. And so there was a lot of indie devs that were able to very rapidly and agile implement RTX into their game, and then show off the visuals of how amazing it made their game look. And then in turn, NVIDIA amplified those products through their social media channels and, visualizing this. This is Bright Memory is on the left that NVIDIA showcased. But a lot of developers were able to take advantage of that and showcase it. Things like, for example, Razer Chroma Key, implementing features like that. You can get a lot of bandwidth out of those type of opportunities. So you need to be aware, keeping an eye out for different things like, different hardware opportunities, different visual features coming online. As an indie game developer, you can be a lot more agile than the big AAA developers in putting these features in. When we're looking at DLSS right now, you can be on the cutting edge of, implementing that, cooking out a build, and showing people, yes, we are taking advantage of the latest and greatest technology in games in our indie game. You can be a lot more versatile than a big AAA game that they're not going to announce it until they're fully sure they're going to be able to support it. They have to support it on 8 different platforms, and it's not going to work on this platform and not going to work on that platform. And they already have this pre-existing contracts to, promote with different hardware. So, it just takes them a lot longer to adapt to those kinds of things. Whereas you as an indie can be rapid fire in that response. Now, the opposite thing with that is one, don't get too wrapped up into those marketing opportunities. If it's going to take your game team offline for a month in your 12-month cycle to implement our, DLSS, and it's not a huge boon. A lot of people, maybe don't have the hardware to support it, things like that. Maybe hold off, maybe look at it as a post-launch opportunity. You can always, run a test on it and say, hey, we tested this, we think it's going to work, but we're not going to have it at launch. And we're gonna add it later, or we're gonna experiment with it later. Because again, people will always say they want the latest and greatest. They might not necessarily have the hardware to take advantage of it. So keep mindful of that. And then the example of not taking, marketing opportunities is also obviously keeping up with, social media and the different opportunities, the rise of, different streaming media and YouTubers and Twitch streamers. And influencers and all the various different things. It is incredibly complicated to keep track of it all. And the example in the lower right here, that's me at, I believe this is PAX. And I was demoing Epsilon, which was the UE4 early access game at the Razer booth, because we were one of the first games that implemented the Chroma functionality in Unreal. I was demoing and this huge crowd showed up, and this person that I didn't really know who they were was standing next to me playing, I think it was Dark Souls. huge crowd gathered around, and that is my producer Terry took a picture of me because I had no idea what was going on, and the person next to me is PewDiePie, and he's playing the game, and I'm like, okay. If I had known at the time who PewDiePie was, which I didn't, I would have said, hey, while you're standing here, why don't you try Epsilon? Why don't you try my indie game that I'm also demoing? But I didn't know what was going on. I had no clue, and kind of lost out on that opportunity because I really wasn't up on what big streamers at the time were at PAX. I just really wasn't focused on that and wasn't able to take advantage of that marketing opportunity. So you got to keep up with all these things. It's a lot of work. It's ever changing, and the older you get, the harder you're going to find it. But keep up with that as best you can. So the last point, I'm running about 10 minutes over, but the last point that I really want to hammer on is that every indie game is games as a service. Games as a service is either the flashy biz dev term to raise venture capital, or it's the hated thing that the gamers hate. But live services, games as a service, all those things. A lot of times that's speaking from a monetization standpoint, but really what I'm talking about is that mindset of launching a game. And I use this. I love this image from one of the Starship S10. The SpaceX program, where the screen, has landed, and meanwhile it's exploding. That may very well be representative of how you feel when you launch your title. But you have to understand as an indie game developer that launching your title is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of a new road. And you have to plan from that. From a personal standpoint, you have to plan from that. From a marketing standpoint, you have to plan from that. From a development standpoint, you really need to be in the space of, launching this title, whether I'm launching it into closed beta, whether I'm launching it into early access, whether I'm launching it into a final quote unquote shipped version. You need to be thinking about your game as a service. And that's regardless of how you're monetizing the game. Your game can be, fully traditional, $10 a pop. You get the game, you play the game, you're done with the game. It could be, a premium with, lots of DLC packs, episodic content. It could be, free to play with cosmetic monetization. However you're doing that, still think of it as a games of a service, i.e. you're putting the game out. You're out there analyzing the feedback that you're getting from the community, whether that feedback is them playing it, whether it's watching the streamers, whether it is reading the forums, whether it is analyzing the feedback on your achievements, looking at your leaderboard, seeing what people are doing, looking for what people are complaining about in the reviews, what you can fix, what patches you can get out, what you can improve. Have that tail built into your schedule and built into your plans. Because the worst thing that you can do in today's, the modern environment is just launch it into the void and then shut up and go completely dark and just cross your fingers and hope that it's awesome. Even if it is awesome and everything goes perfect, that actually is going to mean that you're going to do more work, because guess what? The more people that are playing the game, specifically when it comes to like PC and mobile, the more popular game, the more platforms that are going to be playing on it, the more likely that someone's going to be trying to play it on a 10-year-old MacBook Air with a AZERTY keyboard in Czechoslovakia, that you're going to need to be able to adapt and find out that, hey, players with AZERTY keyboards are having this specific problem, and you never thought about AZERTY keyboards, and you're going to need to go in and put on a support. If nobody plays the game, you're never going to need to worry about AZERTY keyboards. You might never even find out what his AZERTY keyboard is, but you need to, again, have that built in. And from an indie standpoint, especially the small team, think about that from a personal planning perspective. You can't spend all of your energy leading up to that launch and just burn yourself out running up to that and think that you're going to, Friday night at 6 p.m., you're going to hit launch, and then you're just going to go and, have a big celebratory dinner and go sleep for 3 days and come back and check your bank account. It's going to be awesome. That 3 days after launch is the most critical time. So ideally, you're going to be, think about that from a planning perspective. You're going to be launching on a Tuesday, have your team staged, ready to fix bugs, ready to be reactive, ready to, rock and roll and do interviews and, jump on the streams with players. If things go good, great. You're going to be, doing this set of actions. If things don't go good, you're going to be doing that set of actions. But be mentally prepared for that. And that gets into, don't burn yourself out early. Like this is a long-term play, both for your game and your fan base and your studio and your career within the industry. So that being said, I do want to have some time for Q&A. I know I'm running to the end of my hour, so I'll have to push the Q&A into, past noon PST, but happy to stick around and answer questions as long as people are happy to stick around and ask them. I do want to take this time to obviously plug Unreal Engine and talk a little bit about Epic's ecosystem. So I'll have some resources for following up. The first thing, Unreal Engine is free to download and develop. You will not be paying a royalty as an indie game developer until you generate $1 million in revenue for your game. After that is a 5% gross royalty. I recommend that you do go and check that out. A lot of people don't know we expanded the royalty waiver to that first $1 million in revenue, gross revenue, for your title. So there's no upfront fees. There's no monthly thing. There's no basically nothing until you make $1 million. Once you make $1 million, give me a ring and we'll talk about royalties and how you can set that up. Epic Mega Grants. Epic Mega Grants is a program, $100 million fund that has been delivering and will continue to be delivering grants to developers. It covers a wide range of things, but specifically in the game space for folks that are using the Unreal Engine or want to use the Unreal Engine. If you're using a different game engine or proprietary technology and you're interested in using Unreal Engine, there are grants available. If you're currently using Unreal Engine for your amazing indie game, you should definitely get in touch with your regional evangelist. You can apply online, Google Epic Mega Grants, and you'll find the form for that. So highly recommend you check that out. Unreal Online Learning. If you're interested in learning about Unreal, there's a whole suite of free online learning packages. They're constantly updated, new ones added. There's badging that you can add to LinkedIn. So if you're working on building your portfolio, you can work on that as well. I highly recommend it. There's specific programs for, say, folks moving from Unity to Unreal, specific things for gameplay scripters like blueprints, artists, level designers, architects, artists, hard surface artists, where to use Blueprint, where to use C++, all sorts of stuff. It's all free. Highly recommend you check that out. And then last but not least, the Unreal Indies page. Go check that out. Unreal Indies is a program that we're continually working to expand. Obviously, we support indies with all of our different programs. But Unreal Indies will the contact information for your different regional evangelists. Whatever country you're in, you can click on, find out what the evangelist is in your region, follow them on Twitter, follow them on social media, reach out to them. We are here as a global evangelism team to support your project. So please feel free to reach out. So with that, I am exactly at 12 p.m. PST, and I totally nailed my timing, even though I had to speed up a lot faster than I wanted to at the end. So I want to give a big shout out before I open this up to IWOCon. This has been, again, an awesome experience watching people react to this type of conference, and the experience that people have is super cool. And I hope we can see more of this in the future. Although I definitely prefer real personal contact in an amazing giant game show floor. I think that formats like this are going to be amazing in the future, even when we can all travel, to be able to connect with folks around the world. And I think we're starting to envision, what the metaverse is going to look like in the next few years, as we're bringing all the learnings from the past year and applying it to a brighter future. So you can follow me at Twitter at Cerealin. If you're an indie game developer in North America and you want to reach out directly, you can DM me on Twitter. Also on LinkedIn, Christian Allen Designer. Just search for Christian Allen Epic Games on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn primarily for biz dev contacts and can chat with you on Twitter, but at a certain point, I'll just probably tell you to drop me an email. That's my primary social media platforms. I don't do Instagram. You don't need to see a bunch of pictures of me. And Facebook, I save for my family. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much for attending. I hope this was useful to you. Stick with it and ship awesome games. So thanks very much.
First of all, Christian, thanks a lot for the talk. It was incredibly useful and incredibly interesting. And my question is, as a developer of a puzzle game, we're making a puzzle game. We're having a bit of a hard time getting people to test it and showing things on our social media, because we don't want to spoil anything. Because every person we playtest with is basically kind of burnt for our next playtest because they already know the puzzles. We can show very little on social media and so on and so forth. So how would you approach a game where you want to keep some secrecy, but you still want to show things, you want to be out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I run into this a lot. Your point about a puzzle game specifically, where you have a linear puzzle set. Another example, horror games have a big challenge with this. If the whole point of your game is to scare people and creep people out, by the 17th time they've gone through the scary cemetery, they're not scared of it anymore, right? So
we're making a horror puzzle game, so we're hitting all the marks.
There you go. And that is a challenge. And so, one of the ways that you could approach this is to have a set of functional testers and really try to focus them in to a group, to a designated forum of 30 people that are that those type of folks that really like to that have OCD and really like to specifically make sure that things are the way they want to be, and say, hey, you've been your first test that you ran through this, you were really helpful, and the feedback that you gave was very informative. Would you be willing to sign up to this more functional test group where you're going to be doing a lot of the hey, could you specifically check, in our last version, this puzzle had this bug and you complained about it and we fixed it. Would you just, focus your testing on functionally testing that bug, and, keep that group separated more from the general just, hey, try the game and tell us what you think type test group, so that you're saving those folks for the full experience. The other thing that you can do from just a testing or presentation group is you could have more of a bare bones kind of test build where maybe it is lacking some of the atmospheric standpoint and focusing more on the mechanics. You're cooking out a special test build where it's like, hey, this has, a lot of stuff turned off. It's very bare bones. And you're going to go through and do functional testing in it, but you're not going to get the full experience. But we need to test the jumping puzzle mechanic, specifically in here versus, something else. But the other thing is you just accept that there's going to be a certain percentage of folks that, aren't going to get that experience. And a lot of people are willing to trade that. They want to see the game progress. They want to feel like they've been early on in it. And, yes, it's going to ruin the climax for them. It's going to ruin the creepy factor of it because they're going to be used to it when they get that final experience. But the value to the game and to all the other users obviously is huge. So it's definitely it's definitely a challenge. So I hope that helped.
It did. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Hello. I'm first of all, thank you very much. It was very nice to have the chance to even go to something like a convention, because here in Germany it's rather thin to go to such events. I'm Epoch, one of the developers of Ziegler Game Dev. We released Malmö, the game, in December last year, and we actually fell into one of your, or we did something wrong you had in your list. We released right before Christmas, like the 21st, and basically all the time I tried to get people to review the game, magazines and stuff like that. Hundreds I wrote to. All of them might have been working on cyberpunk stuff at that time.
Yep.
So now our situation is as follows. We have no reviews, 7 reviews or maybe like that, no bad ones, and everyone we give the game to likes the game, but we just can't get off the ground. And do you see any chance, or what would be the steps you would take to get a bit off the ground, to at least get a rating on Steam so people see it's rated good?
Yeah, it's a common issue, and it's not just indies that ran into this. I, as an indie, did exactly. I've done this. I launched indie games up against Battlefield, and then wondered why nobody reviewed the game. And then when the reviews did come in, they said it doesn't look as good as Battlefield. When I was at Warner Brothers actually launched a Lord of the Rings game up against Oblivion, and then wondered why nobody reviewed the Lord of the Rings game that came out the same week as Oblivion. I tried to tell Warner Brothers that was a bad idea, but anyway, that's a longer rant. But it is a challenge because game reviewers, a lot of times, especially the sites, right? A lot of times they're motivated by, hey, this thing's hot, so we want to review it so we get clicks, right? Because that's how they generate revenue. And if this thing is dead, then we can just add it to our review down the line list, that they a lot of times never get to when they do some indie game wrap up, when things are kind of slow and they do top 20 indie games you never checked out. And you're like, oh, thanks for writing that a year and a half after my game never generated any revenue and I'm screwed. So it is a hard challenge. To overcome. Where I would look to do that is, or where I would look to remedy that is the streaming community. Getting the game in front of streamers that are, that enjoy ideally enjoy both indie games and the genre of game that you're in, and getting it in front of them and saying, hey, look, this has got, yes, we only have 7 reviews, but they're all positive. And we just want eyes on our game. Hey, we will give you 100 codes to give away. Check out the game. Don't respond to all the I'm sure you if you have a Steam page, you're getting a lot of the, hey, I'm a streamer, I'm a YouTuber, send me a code of your game that are fake, and they're just gray market resellers. But reach out proactively to those streamers and just being like, hey, can we do a key giveaway for the game, 100 keys. Or 10 keys or 20 keys or 5 or whatever, to your community to check this title out. And hopefully that can start to build the momentum, or rebuild the momentum that you kind of lost from being in that Christmas window. That is a really hard window to launch in. So that's kind of the approach. You really got to just, I think, buckle down on the community building aspect. I know that might just me like, oh, that's super easy. It's not super easy. It's hard. But that's the direction that I would mount. randomly emailing the reviewers and asking them to take a look at the game. If you haven't gotten a response on that and you haven't gotten anything from that, then I wouldn't continue to try to spend your time doing that, because they will tend to look, oh, this came out 6 months ago, it's not hot. I don't need to, prioritize it. So I hope that answers your question or gives you some idea.
Give some idea. Thank you. Short follow up. Our game is very slow and very puzzly building. It's a building game with very puzzly aspects, and it's relatively hard. So it is not exactly streamer friendly. We have a couple of streamers that really like it, that have fun with it, and I think of 10 streamers, maybe 2 played it till the end, something like that.
Yeah.
Do you see any other channel, or should we just try to get some more streamers to do it? We are currently doing some patches. Localization is coming up next, and then try it once more. And if it does not work, just continue to the next game.
Well, I think Loc is a key opportunity that you have. One of the key mistakes that I made in the past was not identifying where my smaller games were popular. Specifically, like with Takedown Red Saber, specifically Germany and Italy. I did not realize that there was a strong contingent in both Germany and Italy, and specifically Italy, of groups of players that were really, really, really enjoying the game, and still really enjoy the game. I still get emails from them of like, hey, we're still playing this. There's this hardcore community of, and it's not a lot of people, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands, or maybe it's just 7 really, really vocal people. But when that Loc opportunity is a launch opportunity to go out to those regions and say, hey, now this game is available in German, like literally a marketing launch in German. Sorry, you might, whatever language it may be, in Spanish, and then going out and looking at, maybe social media campaigns. If you're launching it in Portuguese, what are the Portuguese countries that might like this specific game? Try to, think about cross-reference of, slow-based building game, what marketplaces, what specifically countries and regions like those types of games. We're going to have Loc on that. Can we go out and reach out to gaming press in that language and in that country and try to get some relaunch there? Because if you suddenly get, 5 articles in the Italian press, then you might get picked up by, more of the global press based on that. Then it becomes hot, right? Because like, oh, this thing's, blowing up on these, 7 French websites are all talking about, this puzzle game, and it's kind of a thing, like, let's take a look at that. So that, based on what you said, that's where I would look for an opportunity is in the localized markets.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question in chat from Rob. He wants to know what separates Unreal from something like Unity.
Wow, that is a huge question. What separates Unreal from Unity? Well, all game engines have their pluses and minuses, and things they're good at and things they're not as good at. Unreal Engine is being utilized across the board in a variety of applications, a variety of engines. It's on every platform, all the way up from the biggest AAA to the lightest mobile and PC application. But one of the biggest things is that we Epic Games ship games in Unreal Engine. If Unreal Engine is not robust and maintained and strategically positioned for the future, it might affect something like, I don't know, the biggest multi-platform game, one of the biggest multi-platform games in the world. So we are motivated to maintain the product, and we obviously get a lot of learnings from say multi-platform, from launching on multiple platforms. And so, the other thing is, because we are a royalty-based business, we are motivated to have our product be awesome so that you can ship a big product, so that you can make $1 million, so that we can generate royalty revenue from that. Our business aims are aligned. That this specific fact that I am here presenting this on Epic's dime, and the fact that the evangelism team exists, our primary goal is to help developers that are indies, or help developers that are moving over from other technology under Unreal. And I don't have a gold membership to sell. There's not some special monthly thing that I need to sell to you. I'm just want to help you ship a product. Speaks to that. And then obviously, Unreal Engine and the production value that you can bring, both in a visual presentation standpoint, the variety of stylized content that you can produce, and then have that content be optimized and performant on the platform that you want to ship it on. So it's not just a beautiful looking product, it's also running smooth, which obviously consumers these days demand out of, they don't care whether your title's indie or AAA, it has to run good on the platform that you're running it on. So I hope that answers your amazing question. And hard question.
He says that was great.
All right. Thanks very much, folks. Enjoy the rest of IWOCon. Have a beautiful rest of the week. And thanks for your time.